This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Welcome to the Late Show on Teachers Talk Radio with your host, Ray. Tonight we are discussing neurodivergent educators and their experiences of inclusion or lack of inclusion in different schools we've worked in. We'll be talking with our guest Amy, who's had a range of experiences and will hopefully share some insights and some coping strategies with us.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
So, welcome to this very late Monday evening. We are discussing the experiences of neurodivergent educators in different schools, and we'll welcome texts and calls from any listeners who have something to share here. So my guest this evening, Amy, is a neurodivergent educator. I'll speak more about her in a minute, and she's going to share her experiences with us. And full disclosure on me and my life, I am not a neurodivergent educator. I do not have any kind of neurodivergent diagnosis, but I have a number of friends and family and loved ones who are. They have a range of experiences and situations, and I always have found it interesting, and I do mean interesting in the negative sense here, how difficult it can be for them in what is already an extremely challenging environment. As I said, I'm not one of those educators myself, but I am a dedicated introvert, and I even with that, I find it incredibly hard to work in the chaotic, crowded, busy, loud environments of schools, some more so than others, and the relentless social expectations that come along with our job. And I've often found myself sitting there after a particularly raucous lesson or break time or event, or just wandering through the corridor on any given day, asking myself, why am I here? Why am I doing this to myself? This is not how my brain works. I'm not built for this. And it can be extremely difficult to manage what you consciously want to be doing, and what your brain seems to be wired to do. When those things don't line up, it's not the best feeling in the world. It can make your day-to-day life very, very difficult. So I've come up with a number of coping strategies for myself to give myself a break from the demands. But even so, it's constant performativity. It's constant. I'm hesitant to use the word masking when it comes to myself. But it really is all, it's all sides of the same. I don't know how to finish that metaphor. Coin. Does that work? They're different versions of the same thing, really. We have to put on this face that we show the world, our students, our employers, the parents, the community, and keep everything else inside, and essentially be someone that we're not for a prolonged period of time. And the mental toll that takes, and the mental and emotional exhaustion and physical exhaustion that comes with that can manifest in a number of different ways. So it interests me on a personal level as well as just seeing other colleagues and friends and family go through their own neurodivergent experiences in education. So our guest tonight, Amy, is she's worked in mainstream secondary schools for many years, primarily with SEND students. She knows a heck of a lot about SEND, and she is autistic and has a very unique, I'm an English teacher. She has a unique perspective on the ways that schools can and I'm not going to say cannot, can and do, and also do not support their neurodivergent staff. She's got a range of positive and negative experiences there. So I'm going to let Amy introduce herself now and add anything or be a little bit more specific perhaps about her experiences in education, because that was quite vague. Amy, can you hear everyone okay?
Yes, I can. I'm really
Lovely.
excited to join, really. But
Excellent.
but yes, as Ray mentioned, I've worked in mainstream education for many years now, so around a decade. When I started in the profession, I wasn't actually diagnosed. It was only until last year that I received my diagnosis.
Right.
So having to go on my diagnosis journey whilst working in, as you said, such a
Yeah.
chaotic environment has been quite a journey. But I'm hoping what I bring tonight inspires perhaps maybe some who may be neurodivergent themselves, and hopefully I can shed some positive light of what people like me can bring to education.
Excellent. I hope you can. I'm sure you will. So when we spoke before, we had a little chat before, and um, quite impressed. I was quite impressed. Let's start on a positive note because I was
Okay.
quite um, pleased, I suppose, with the with how happy you were at your current school. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your role within that school and how supported you feel as a neurodivergent educator there?
Yeah, sure. So I am currently a HLTA, and what my job entails, for those who might not know, who are listening, is I do a lot of in-class support, but alongside of being a high-level TA, I have other responsibilities. So my, what I would say probably specialist responsibility is teaching our intervention groups. Um, but when I first started at that school, I came with what I could say is probably very shattered confidence. Um, and I felt a little bit lost, um, in myself and my abilities. It took me a while to settle, but I'd say after doing the whole academic year at this school, I now feel comfortable in what I'm doing. I would say I've got the confidence now to seek support from my employer, and I would say my learning support team as well that I work with, they're all wonderful, and they fully accept who I am as well, and they've really helped me on my diagnosis journey. And I'm just
Mm,
able to be me, which is brilliant. Still got a way to go, because unmasking in a workplace after nearly 30 years of masking is quite scary. Um,
yeah.
but I am hoping that just my journey can be an inspiration, to other neurodivergent educationists, but also the young people I work with.
Yeah, and that was something that came through last time we spoke as well, how passionate you are about the students that you work with and that you want to be an inspiration to them, because I think I guess you can or relate to some of their experiences and they can probably see a positive role model in you on obviously we all think that, we all hope that as teachers and TAs and
Yeah.
educators, but I think on that extra level that you can relate to some of their experiences probably benefits them hugely, I would imagine.
Yes, it does. Yes, and I'd say I probably have that unique sense of empathy that other people might not be able to give. And I think I've always been told that I'm naturally quite patient with the children, and that's probably because I can see things through their eyes when they're frustrated or when they're having a meltdown. And a lot of it comes from back in education. Yes, I was bright, I was getting the grades, but I feel like I went miss because I am a heavy masker, and
Hmm.
because I was getting the grades, my social and emotional struggles didn't really matter so much. So that's something I'm really passionate about, is not just the academic side for my students, but for them finding themselves as a person and being socially and emotionally comfortable, not just within school, but
Yeah.
ready for when they leave into society.
Because that's so important, and it's something I've talked about on a few shows now. This, that we do what we do, not necessarily. I mean, I suppose you don't have a subject specialism, do you? That's not how your job
N-
works.
no, no.
No.
So
So
it's
okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So no, that's fine. So I think if you're a class teacher with a subject specialism, you obviously have some sort of, uh, dare I say the P word, passion for what you're teaching in the subject itself and the knowledge that you want to impart to these young
yeah,
people. But it's so much more than that. And for you to be able to relate to and empathize with these students on that personal level, that world, to do with the world outside of school and beyond school, in a way that they potentially haven't been able to connect to with other adults, is so important. And I think that's one of the things that, um, management teams in schools and leadership need to recognize and embrace and really push for, is supporting all of their staff so that they can be there as diverse a group as possible, including neurodivergence, so that the students are getting that diverse group of role models who they can connect with and they can relate to and can support them outside of the classroom and really guide them for the rest of their lives, because it's not just about photosynthesis at the end of the day, is it? So I
no.
think it's super important. All right. And to take it back a bit now that we've started on a happy note. So you mentioned that when you
Okay.
first came to this school, your confidence was shattered, and this was at a point. How long have you been there now?
So I started at that school in September 22. I had to think there. Yeah, September 22.
Okay. Okay, great.
So yeah,
So
it's quite a
you
while.
didn't have a diagnosis at this point, and it was obviously quite
No.
recent, and trying to come back from a place where you said your confidence was shattered must be quite difficult. But what led to it? Like, can you tell us a little bit about some of your less positive experiences around masking and maybe not feeling as included as a member of staff and supported as a member of staff in a different environment?
Well, I think really a lot of it just stems from, well, lack of understanding, I think, in general in mental
Okay.
health.
Yeah.
I would say, after COVID, that was probably, quite a tricky time for me. I found COVID quite difficult. As someone who's autistic, I'm very black and white thinking. So there was a lot of,
Hmm.
well, I'm in work, and I'm around lots of children, but why can't I go and see my family and friends? It just
Yeah.
made no sense to me. And when you've got, the government saying that COVID's a scary thing, I'm thinking, well, I'm in work, I'm close to all these children. Um, so yeah, I'd say, I suppose in a light sense, I probably had some trauma from COVID. And I
Hmm.
feel like suddenly having to go back to this normal world and a normal functioning school, I found it really daunting and scary. Um,
Yeah.
and when I started at my previous schools, I did made it known that I had anxiety and had other mental health issues in the past to be aware of, and
Hmm.
you know I would try and seek out help for that to try and overcome these barriers, because I found myself getting burnt out to the point I was just very regularly physically ill. So
Hmm.
I was getting lots of viruses quite a lot because I was really tired. I was getting lots of chest infections, and I
Hmm.
try to explain I just need that extra mental health support. Um, but I just felt that was a lack of understanding, lack of compromise. That
Yeah.
was what I needed really. It was just I just needed
Yeah.
that simple, I just needed someone to reach out to me and just check in with me.
Yeah. And you weren't getting that in a previous situation. Yeah.
No, no.
I feel, I mean, I've experienced some different environments as well, and I've found that the environments that are rigid, rigid,
Yes.
regimented, these are the rules, zero tolerance, etc., etc. You can
Yes.
say what you like and what you feel. There are all sorts of there's all the discourse about that, in terms of students and education and attainment and learning and culture, school culture, and so on and so on. But in terms of what we're speaking about right now, in terms of supporting staff who are, particularly if it's a large school, going to be a very wide-ranging group of people. You're going to have
Yes, definitely.
diversity. I mean, whatever that looks like in that place. There will be differences. There will be neurodivergences. There will be different personalities and different requirements. We don't stop needing different things because we turned 16 or 18 or we left school. And I feel like
Exactly.
those more rigid environments that they say the rigidity is for the children and their benefit, but it affects the staff. And I have yet to experience personally, but I also have yet to hear anecdotally of any educational institution that takes that very strict zero tolerance approach with the students, but is understanding and
Yes.
accommodating for staff. I mean, please, if anyone is listening who is sitting, well, I work in a school that's great with staff, but we don't tolerate. Please send a text because I'd love to hear about it. But in my personal experience, and literally every teacher I've ever spoken to myself, the rigidity for students is echoed and mirrored in how the staff are treated and how certain expectations are placed on teachers and TAs and everyone who works in the building, and that no excuses and zero deviation from the norm allowed applies to
Exactly.
the adults and the employees as well. And that is so, to use one of my favorite sayings from my homeland, is completely ass backwards. You cannot have
Definitely.
adults being treated like children. You cannot have neurodiverse staff whose needs and personalities and requirements are not just not being met, but there's no attempt to meet them by the employer who have a duty of care to their staff. You cannot tell the public and advertise that you are inclusive of X, Y, and Z when it comes to the kids,
Yes.
and yet utterly fail the inclusion test when it comes to the people in your employment. It's just, and it happens all the time. And it's so very wrong. And I mean, do you want to share anything? Can you share anything about why you left your previous school, or was it just kind of everything at once, or did the fact that you weren't being, or you didn't feel supported, play into it at all? Can you comment on that?
I think it is a mix of both, everything at once. I think,
Okay.
I was going, through a lot mentally, but I also feel, the lack of support. But like you said, I just feel like in some places, once you get through the door, that's it. You've got to leave everything in your mind bothering
Mm-hmm.
you at the door. And,
Mm-hmm.
we're human. We work in a
Mm-hmm.
very, human to human role. So why can't we, express these emotions as human? And how can we be our best selves for the kids if they're not going to help us be our best selves? And
Yeah.
essentially, that's what I felt like was happening. Um,
Yeah.
and if I was off for genuine reasons, so if I was really not myself and not well at all, there would be that pressure of, oh, well, when are you coming back? When are you coming
Mm-hmm.
back? And that really adds to it. So you end up going back sooner than you probably should. And that puts you
Yeah.
in an
And
even
then
worse
and then the
position.
cycle continues with the illness. You
Yes,
don't get my
exactly.
I worked in a place where I was sick and not getting any better, like to the point that I regularly lost my voice. I coughed once so hard that I threw up and had to go home.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
yeah, in the middle of a lesson, threw up in the bin in the corridor.
Oh gosh.
Um, yeah, it was not going away, and it
No,
lasted
no.
for over 2 months. I was ill over 2 months. I finally got a blood test and ended up sorting it out, and just in time for like Christmas holiday. So I was able to sleep and actually recover. But it just makes everything impossible. And what I don't get in my head. Well, I guess it does make sense, because if you're silly enough to think that you can treat children in a certain way, then why am I surprised that would carry over to the way that you treat your staff? I suppose I shouldn't be. I guess I need to lower my expectations of my fellow humans. But anyway, I just want to pop in some comments, some texts we've been getting. So
Okay.
Yasmin, this is Yasmin, who's also been a guest on the show, I believe. I think that's her. She says, I feel some education providers feel their duty to staff well-being is met by providing links to external info sources or surveys, but it's not enough for those who are actually struggling. You can't relax and recuperate without feeling stressed about cover work. And she's absolutely right. And this is relevant to everyone, isn't it? You know, it's the quintessential teacher dilemma. I'm sick. I should stay home and recover, but I have to set all of this cover work, and then I'm going to be stressing during the day. And then when I get into my lessons tomorrow, or whenever I get back, I'm going to have to deal with the absolute carnage that has been left in my wake.
Exactly.
And it's like, is this worth it, or should I just go in? And then we make ourselves go in, and we don't get any better, and we're physically, mentally, emotionally messy. Emily says here, it's so hard as you feel you can't have a mental health day. You lie and say you have physical illness because it's easier. And I've done that. I've definitely done that more than once.
I think a lot of us have probably done that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd go out on a limb and say probably most. I mean, I've never no, do you know what? It probably has been all mental. It's because of the physical manifestations of the anxiety and the stress. It does become an actual physical problem. If you're under all of this pressure and you're worried about so many different things, you do start to feel nauseous. You do get it. I do anyway. I do get a headache.
Yeah.
I sometimes don't sleep. Like, yes, maybe the cough was keeping me up, or maybe I threw up, at 8 p.m. and couldn't sleep till 12, but your sleep is disrupted and you're not rested. And so these mental health days that we lie about, like Emily's right, but also I feel like so often if you're in a place where you need a mental health day, those symptoms, you're getting the physical symptoms manifesting as well. It's just, they all play off each other. You can't look at any of them in a vacuum. So I definitely agree. And there's some more.
We become physically.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some more texts that have come in that I'm going to share in a minute when we're back from this.
Bet UK is just 2 weeks away. Are you ready to join 30,000 attendees, 600 plus exhibitors on 7 content stages from 120 countries, and see Louis Theroux, Dame Darcy Bustle, Jason Arde, Laurel Kana, Baroness Noella Benjamin, Dan Fitzpatrick, Mr. PICT, and so much more? I might need to bring my trainers. The best part? Educators go free! Get your ticket now at uk.betshow.com/visitor-registration.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
Introducing Eton X from Eton College, a diverse range of quality online courses enabling young people to aspire and excel. Designed for self-study, these web-based courses empower your students with essential leadership, communication, and academic skills for success at school and beyond. Our Study Skills course sharpens their learning abilities, while the AI Fundamentals course equips them with vital digital know-how in a fast-changing world. Other popular courses include verbal communication, critical thinking, writing skills, resilience, creative problem solving, and many more. Offer the Eton X curriculum in your school for free. Visit etonx.com to find out more.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Maths is in the news again, according to the BBC News website. This time the story is about the pass rate for GCSE resits in the subject. November results show 22.9% of maths entries were marked at grade 4 or above, down from 24.9% in 2022 and 26.9% in 2019. In contrast, the pass rates for GCSE English resits rose to 40.3%, up from 38% in 2022 and 32.3% in 2019. In England, under 18s must retake the GCSE in English and Maths if they did not achieve a minimum of grade 4. The resits for the recent November series were marked, like the summer 2023 exams, back in line with the pre-pandemic levels. Prior to the exams, some colleges reported they were having to expand class sizes and hire additional exam space to cope with rising numbers of pupils retaking the two subjects. Those sitting the subjects in November are only a subset of the total resitting, as some pupils will not take the tests until the summer. The fall in the maths pass rate comes after government announced plans to replace A-level and T-level qualifications with a new Advanced British Standard, which would include some English and Maths up to the age of 18. Whilst the arrival of the new Ofsted chief made many headlines across media outlets, Schools Week focused on tech issues which prevented many inspectors from accessing training. All inspectors working in schools, FE, social care and early years were due to attend mental health awareness training led by Sir Martin Oliver, which was around 3,000 staff. However, it was announced that Ofsted had experienced some technical issues and that fewer than 1,000 inspectors were able to actually access the online sessions. Ofsted did say that a recording was available, so those not able to attend would watch it back. Inspections, paused for the start of the new term, will resume on the 22nd of January. They were not paused in early years settings. Attendance is in the news again and looks set to be a key focus for all political parties as a general election approaches. In a recent speech to the Centre for Social Justice, Shadow Minister for Education Bridget Phillipson said Labour would pass a law to register and count the children taught at home, adding that it was important that local authorities know where children not in school are. Plans also included setting up more breakfast clubs. The current government has proposed similar in its schools bill, but this and many other aspects were abandoned at a later date. However, new attendance hubs are being launched in London to help reduce persistent absence. The DfE has chosen 9 schools with excellent attendance rates to share ideas with others across England. An advertising campaign called Moments Matter, Attendance Counts was also launched, although some aspects drew criticism from some quarters concerned that the campaign sought to minimise mental health issues. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan said, "Tackling attendance is my number one priority." In Wales, teachers at a high school are striking over poor behaviour of pupils, and NASUWT in Wales say there are now 6 schools in dispute over classroom safety. Teachers in Scotland have also raised concerns about deteriorating behaviours. The TES magazine featured an article by Bill Rogers, behaviour consultant, university lecturer and author. The article focuses on possible reasons for what teachers report as deteriorating behaviours in schools and strategies to improve things. These include focusing on describing and insisting on the behaviours needed for all to learn. Also using clear, assertive language and calling pupils to account for their behaviour. The full article is available online. Finally, the BBC has run an article on the news website focusing on how children and adults can stay healthy at the start of the new term. Officially, January marks the start of the spring term, but winter bugs like norovirus and flu are likely around for several months yet. The article focuses on 5 top tips: regular hand washing, regular cleaning of high contact areas, staying at home for serious illnesses such as high fever, vomiting or diarrhoea, vaccinations where necessary or applicable, and using the NHS online services to keep informed or to seek advice. Hopefully, a healthy new year will lead to a happy start to the spring term. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
Interesting comments there on attendance, considering we are talking about how more negative experiences in school can lead to a decrease in teacher and TA attendance, when it really doesn't always need to be the case. Sometimes you get physically sick, but a lot of the other stuff should be avoided, can be avoided, and unfortunately sometimes it isn't. So I've had a bit of an influx of messages, so I'm just gonna kind of go back, and then we can answer some questions and share thoughts on some of these contributions. So Emily has shared her experiences as a neurodivergent teacher. So she says that she has ADHD, dyslexia, as well as physical difficulties. And fatigue is a constant companion. So that it's stemming not only from the physical demands of the job, but also from the mental exertion required to maintain focus. And this is something I want to talk about a bit later. And we've mentioned it already. It's just, even if you're physically fine, it is mentally exhausting to do what we do for as long as we do every day. And it's exhausting for everyone. But if you have added challenges and there are additional barriers in place, then at times it can honestly feel impossible. So Emily says the effort to stay on top of lesson plans, grading, and communication with parents and colleagues often feels like running a marathon without a finish line in sight. The overwhelming nature of my surroundings often engulfs me in a sea of distractions. I think this is an English teacher as well. Emily says classroom stimuli, administrative duties, and the constant need to adapt lesson plans can create a relentless storm within my mind. Simple tasks that others might take for granted become Herculean efforts. Oh, definitely an English teacher. Leaving me mentally drained and emotionally exhausted. And it is. And as I've said, I'm not, for anyone who's joined recently, I'm not a neurodivergent teacher. Amy, our guest, is autistic. Emily, whose comments I've just been reading out, has ADHD and dyslexia and physical difficulties as well. But I am such an introvert. When I took the aptitude tests in my secondary school, when I was in high school in a different country, I don't think they even have this test anymore, but they've got versions of it now. And it tells you what careers you should take or that you might be more suited to. I got things like laboratory researcher. I got things like that because that's my brain. I know I'm an English teacher. I mean, today I got so into a poem I almost cried. Like my year 11s were looking at me like, "Miss, what's wrong with you?" And we're doing this unbelievably social job that requires putting on these various masks and performances, and the additional performances and the additional masking required for neurodivergent teachers, and even for little old me just wanting to sit there with my cup of tea and a book, is surreal. Like, it's very difficult for people to get their heads around it, and it often leads to comments like, whenever I dare to complain about teaching to non-teachers, which is don't ever do that, just don't do it. But whenever I do, I always get comments like, well, you know what you signed up for, or this is the job, or, isn't it all worth it? And it's like, lady, you don't get it. Like, you just don't understand.
We do it for
how
a reason.
demanding. Yeah, but we do, but they're, in a way they're right, because it's a vocation and blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't mean we're martyrs. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be supported in every way possible by our employers who have a duty of care. Emily, thank you for that. It's useful to hear from another neurodivergent educator and your experiences. And with ADHD, I mean, I'm sure we all have so many ADHD students in our classes.
Yes.
And it's like trying to get them to focus. And, we may have 10, 20, 30 years on these kids, but the problems don't go away. The challenges don't disappear.
They're not cured.
No, you develop coping strategies. You have life experience behind you. You learn to recognize potential problematic situations or meltdowns before they happen, hopefully. And then maybe you can avoid certain scenarios, but the barriers themselves do not vanish when you hit a
No,
certain
not at all.
age. So it's so important that if a school is keen on inclusion for SEN students and supporting the autistic students and the students with ADHD, then they have to do the same for their staff. And they're
Absolutely.
just very often not. Some questions. Emily has
Okay.
a particularly interesting question. I'm scrolling and scrolling now. She says, I would like to know if Amy has any strategies for talking to managers or HR, which I think could tie nicely into a question that Yasmin has also asked. She says, I'd like
Okay.
to know if Amy found her current workplace to be more supportive after the diagnosis, or if it was good practice from when she joined. So let's start there. Amy, how did the support you were getting from your workplace change once you had your official diagnosis, or had it always been a supportive environment for you?
Well, there's a reason I've stayed at this school, and
Okay.
the fact of it is they've always been supportive. As you probably know, as an educator yourself, the waiting list to be diagnosed for any neurodivergence is so long.
Mm-hmm.
So when I interviewed at this school, I did, I was adamant and made it clear about myself and what I was potentially going through. And I'll say from the get go, I feel like I've been one in a million to be
Yeah.
lucky enough to receive the support I have, and to just be able to feel in a safe enough space to unmask as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I feel like my colleagues have really helped me through my diagnosis. It didn't come easy. It did take a lot of, self perseverance to accept that it's okay to have help, but having colleagues and managers to say it's okay to need help has really
Mm-hmm.
helped me. Um, because, like I said, I'm a very literal thinker, and before diagnosis, I just felt I wasn't valid for support.
Yeah.
But my Sanko, the manager at the time, she made it clear, well, you are valid for support. It's a difficult
Mm-hmm.
thing to be awaiting a diagnosis for so long, and not knowing what the outcome is. So I then had a meeting with HR and one of the assistant principals, and before my diagnosis, we looked at strategies and potential solutions for me,
Mm-hmm.
and what could work for me. Um, and there's quite a few things which I find work for me. So that's that my so I because I do teach as part of being a HLTA, is that I get
Yeah.
my planning and prep time protected.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not used to cover lessons during those times because, as you can
Yeah.
imagine, as someone who's
Yeah.
autistic, I meticulously plan those hours, and they are sacred to me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my manager, always checks in with me on the daily. Um, if I come in on a bad day, she goes, right, what do you feel that you need to be different? What lessons do you think
Mm-hmm.
you will manage? What won't you manage? Um, because I feel like it's better to adapt rather than not going in at all. And the
Yeah.
fact that I'm lucky to have that support, and I had that support before a diagnosis. It's allowed me to, have a better attendance.
Yeah.
Because I know if I wake up mentally feeling unwell, I know I have got a safe space, and I do have people who care and who are going
Yeah.
to listen.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I think, and it is quite sad because I've always, aspired to be a teacher, but because of my barriers and own needs and experience I know
Mm-hmm.
of others, I'm quite reluctant to go and do teacher training and step up to that level. So, I do
Mm-hmm.
feel for anyone who is actually a teacher, and is neurodivergent, because I can appreciate that their responsibility is a lot more than mine, and they can't really adapt their role as much as I can. Their timetable is set in stone. There is certain classes they have to teach. There is marking that has to be done. But unfortunately, I feel like it is a place where we have to, be tough with ourselves and admit that it's okay to seek support.
Yeah.
And if, the place you work in is inclusive, someone will go, right, let's see what we can do for you.
Yeah. And I think it's so important that as soon as you get confirmation that maybe it's not the inclusive place you thought it was, that rather than turning that inward and seeing it as some sort of personal failure on your own part, you start looking for some place that is, because there's only
Exactly.
only so much you can do to try and fight that battle.
Exactly.
But it's good that you found somewhere that is so supportive, and where it sounds like they really take the initiative to make sure that you are able to be the best HLTA that you can be on that day, and that you can do what you can do, and what you get done, what you can get done to the best of your ability, rather than it turning into some sort of shame show or punishment.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because
And
someone
I'm glad,
sorry, go on.
I was saying, I did get to the point where I did feel like I wanted to give in with working in education. But, to those who feel like they are struggling, there are schools out there. It might take time. But I found every school to be different. It might be the same job, but it's a different school. And I was about to give in, and then I did find my place. So, there is somewhere for people. Like me.
There is, and I've talked about my different experiences in supportive and unsupportive schools at length on a TTR Twitter space back in September, I think, and on Lucy's, and that was something that came up repeatedly. You can feel the exact same person can feel like a complete failure and the worst teacher in the world in one school, and they will be outstanding at everything and be totally confident and be absolutely flying in another. And it's all about the environment and the fit between the environment and the person. But then you get into the whole conversation of, well, should it have to come to that, or should employers just actually do what they're obliged to do and what they should be doing, and support all their staff in the first place? But the reality is they don't. Not all of them.
No.
And we need to find schools that are supportive. Now, Emily has said, following on from what we've been talking about, she says the pressure can be too much, and if you divulge that you're having a hard time, or you need a mental health day, or you would need some support, or you'd be scared to be put on a support plan for not handling your job. And I've had, because I personally get sensory overload quite easily, which is really fun in a raucous irate classroom. If I'm not switched on that day, or I'm already at capacity and my limits, my tolerance is lower than it normally is. It's It's a challenge. And I was having at my current school, which I love because everyone is genuinely really lovely and supportive and actually wants the best for their employees and their colleagues. And I was having a rough time before, like around October half term. There was a bereavement in the family. There was, my kitchen roof was leaking. Like, it was 10 things all at once. And there were a couple of difficult classes, and I was adjusting to the school, and I had some rough days. And the deputy head came in my class and was like, just in the nicest, most like honest way possible, he was like, we can cover your lessons and you can go home. If you need to go home, you can go home. But and I went into panic mode immediately, because I've had not that sentiment exactly, but I've had similar things where, a member of SLT has approached me and said something, my favorite line: do you think your pastoral role is preventing you from teaching the way that you should be teaching? And I just like went straight back to that horrible place, and it was like, no, I'm fine. And he was like, no, honestly, this is not a threat. This is not anything. He was like genuinely like, I'm a little concerned about you, and it's okay. we can help. But that's the place he was coming from. And I got there eventually. And I ended up staying the day because it was quite a light teaching day, and I managed to get my act together and get through it. But sometimes you just need someone to see you and to see what you're struggling
Absolutely.
with, and to offer that hand, to offer that support, and be there and genuinely mean it without any sort of ulterior motive or any kind of,
Yes.
secret, underlying sinister threat. It's just, again, it
Absolutely.
really shouldn't be too much to ask. You would think. Now,
Just some human compassion.
yeah, a little bit of understanding, because we're all expected to extend that to our neurodiverse and just diverse student body. So why do we suddenly forget that our teachers are people too? It's all a bit strange. Now, Emily has said, I would like to know if Amy has any strategies for talking to managers or HR. So, when you found yourself in situations in your current school where you needed that support, either before or after your
Okay.
diagnosis, did you approach that directly with your manager? Did they start that conversation? Did you speak to HR about it? What did you do?
It was kind of, I'd say, a balance of both. I think I needed that support. But my manager I had at the time, I think she noticed that, I perhaps did need support, and I needed to give myself permission to go, okay, I need some help. And she helped me put myself forward to HR. And part of the things that we discussed in my meeting was to have, regular check-ins with the manager, with my manager, who is a Senko. And that does happen, I'd say, on the daily, because we
Mhm.
work closely together. And I because it's become a habit now of these check-ins. Sometimes before she even asks me if I'm okay, if I'm having a rough day, I will openly say, I'm having a bad day. And then she will go, oh, tell me why. Yeah, like I say, I think it's just because I've been lucky, really, to be somewhere where I have been recognised as someone
Yeah.
who's needing support.
So have you,
But
when you got, sorry to interrupt, but when you got your diagnosis, did you, I'm just thinking about, what other um, neurodivergent educators might be going through, because as you said, it's quite a process
okay,
getting that diagnosis, and then what to do about that.
definitely.
Um, yeah, did you have a conversation with HR? Because I know I've spoken to a few teachers who've gone to a new school but not yet disclosed when they were hired that they have, which even though we're asked these things,
Yeah.
didn't disclose until later that they have, for example, ADHD, or they've received a diagnosis whilst already in employment, and then wondered what to do with that. Did you speak to HR at all directly, or did you kind of leave that up to your manager?
No, I did it directly. I
Okay.
think confidence that I had, obviously, in the support I have been having. I sent them my diagnosis report, so they could analyze it, and we
Hmm.
could have another meeting just to update anything. Because sadly, I'd say, like, advice not from HR, but I'd say from occupational health, when it comes to
Hmm.
neurodivergence, especially autism, the advice for employers is very vague.
Is
Um,
it?
I would say it's very textbook advice, but
Okay.
you know, someone you've probably come across a lot of children with autism. No one with autism is the same. Not
No.
everyone has the same traits. Not everyone has the same barriers.
Yeah.
And we did actually discuss this in the HR meeting, saying the advice that we've been given is vague. Um, but they are very open for if I suddenly realise, I actually this might be a good idea. They are
Okay.
happy for me to drop them an email, because post diagnosis, it is a process. You've got to learn how to be you, in a sense.
Mm.
Because before I was diagnosed, I would say the only place I was ever just purely me was in my own home. Um,
Yeah.
so to suddenly unravel me and decide what I needed. It isn't just a, quick one-shot process. It does take time. But my manager and HR, they are very open for me to email and saying, I've got a problem with this. Can we discuss this? So that is something that has really helped.
Yeah, and I think I think if you can manage to have that open, honest dialogue with someone, whether it's HR, whether it's your line manager, or someone, then I can imagine you'll get a feeling very, very quickly if this is going to work out, or if it's
Exactly. Yes.
if it's not, if we need to get looking at those adverts again. Okay, so again, if any listeners have any other questions that they'd like Amy to answer from her wealth of personal experience, please do text in, and feel free to give us a call as well if you've got anything you'd like to contribute.
Bet UK is just 2 weeks away. Are you ready to join 30,000 attendees, 600 plus exhibitors on 7 content stages from 120 countries, and see Louis Theroux, Dame Darcy Bustle, Jason Arde, Laurel Kana, Baroness Llewellyn Benjamin, Dan Fitzpatrick, Mr. PICT, and so much more? I might need to bring my trainers. The best part? Educators go free! Get your ticket now at uk.betshow.com/visitor-registration.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
Introducing Eton X from Eton College, a diverse range of quality online courses enabling young people to aspire and excel. Designed for self-study, these web-based courses empower your students with essential leadership, communication, and academic skills for success at school and beyond. Our Study Skills course sharpens their learning abilities, while the AI Fundamentals course equips them with vital digital know-how in a fast-changing world. Other popular courses include verbal communication, critical thinking, writing skills, resilience, creative problem solving, and many more. Offer the Eton X curriculum in your school for free. Visit etonx.com to find out more.
So I really like what you said, Amy, about it being a journey to kind of figure out who you are when you get your diagnosis and how to be yourself.
Definitely.
Yeah. Do you feel like well, I assume you have. How has that process changed how you are at work?
This is quite a tricky question, but I think what nobody ever tells you when you get a diagnosis is that you do get a big sense of relief, but you also go through a process of grieving, I guess, for your former self. Like, how things could have been if, I know sooner. But I would say, really, because, I do find work is, it is a safe space for me. And now I'm openly being myself. I would say, this is the most confident I've ever been in my job. I feel like I am absolutely thriving in what I'm doing. And, doing things like teaching a lesson is something I had never thought I'd be capable of doing. And the fact that I'm able to use, yes. The first lesson I ever taught was at my interview for this school, and it was daunting. But now, as a HLTA at my school, you have, a bit of a specialism, an extra responsibility, and taking up some teaching for these, for the focused provision groups is one of them. And I'm a very creative person in terms of making resources, differentiating and tailoring resources, and just using that unique ability I have to put forward to my students. It's just wonderful. And, my students absolutely respond so well to my lessons. And I just feel so confident what I do, and I love my job. And I'm just happy that I can finally, be at that, place in my mind. And the great thing is my colleagues, they know that I'm quirky and unique, but they love it. They love me for it. So I'd say I've created some lovely friendships as well at work, which I think is really important in a job as
Absolutely.
tricky as ours.
Absolutely. And
Um,
we were telling our we have a student teacher, PGC student, who's just started today. And I went I went up to her at the end of the day and was like, "So, how you feeling?" And she actually seemed really positive. She seemed really positive. She didn't seem hopelessly overwhelmed or
I'm
anything. And she
glad.
said, "Everyone seems really nice here." And I was telling her, it makes all the difference if you have
Definitely.
kind, helpful, thoughtful, supportive colleagues. You can get through pretty much anything. And it makes, even if you're in an environment where leadership maybe aren't as inclusive for staff or students as they
Yes.
should be, or there are whatever difficulties, if you have a team who are functioning as a team,
Yes.
then you can get through pretty much all of it intact. Maybe not for an extended period of time,
Absolutely.
but it certainly makes your day-to-day life easier. So I absolutely agree with that. Do you have any kind of tips or tricks? Like let me give you an example. So when I
Okay.
get overstimulated as as an introvert, um, when my tolerance is low and there's a particularly chaotic moment, or I just, for whatever reason that day, just am not, you know, peopling very well. If I need, if I get through a lesson and I feel like my brain is frazzled, because it literally is, it's like a special type of headache that I get. It's like my head, it feels like it's been stuffed with
Yes.
cotton wool. um, I feel like
Yes.
I'm underwater. Like I can't hear clearly. I can't even see clearly sometimes. Like I literally I find the darkest room I can, the smallest, darkest room I can. I lock the door. I turn off the lights. I sit on the floor with my back against the wall, and I just breathe. And if there were like night vision cameras in the room, I'd look like a completely insane person. But it's what I have to do to like
Yes.
reset. It like hits the reset button on my brain, at least partially. So if it, in times of desperation, that's what I do. Do you have
Yes.
any kind of similar routines?
Yeah, so I mean, it could be a bit more flexible for me because I'm a TA, but for me, noise and crowds is a big thing. I
Yeah.
struggled with it before COVID, but I'd say that is probably a tolerance that's probably regressed since COVID as well. But for me, I've always got in ear defenders ready to to put in my ears,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, for crazy year eight classes.
Mm-hmm.
But I enter my, so especially for TAs, this is quite a useful thing, but I enter literally just after the children have entered. So I avoid that chaos and then I leave as they're packing away.
Uh-huh.
So I give myself those transition times. And actually that's what we do for
Yeah.
our autistic students as well. We give them that
Yeah.
leeway to,
Yep.
enter and
Yep.
leave without the busyness. And also my timetable is, I've learnt what works well for me and what doesn't, and I've been very honest with my manager, and now I have a timetable which I feel is manageable. So for me, being in mainstream a different hour every lesson I find very chaotic, but having
Yeah.
a fine balance with being in learning support with our focus provision groups and being in mainstream, that's that fine balance. So I get to be in my
Yeah.
haven, but I also still get to be out there in mainstream. Um,
Yeah.
but those are the main things that I've done to help me, I
I
suppose,
found that really
manage the
difficult
crisis. And
too. When I started a new school a few years ago, I
yes,
guess they thought this would, I don't know how much of it was unavoidable timetabling and rooming issues, probably most of it, to be fair, but also
yes,
I went in as quite an experienced teacher, so they probably felt like, oh, she can handle it, but like obviously not not knowing me. Um,
yeah,
I was in I was in so many different classrooms in so many different areas of the
yes,
school. Like I had to teach one lesson a week, I think, in a science lab, but it wasn't like, it was like a science classroom. It wasn't like a lab setup.
Yeah.
It was like it was a weird setup, but it was definitely a science room, and it just threw me off completely. Having to make sure the books and the resources were in the right room before the lesson, and running from point A to point B. And this school also had lineups before school, break time, lunchtime,
Yes.
after school. So like it was just like go, 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 go. And there was never that chance to
Yeah.
even like sit in a dark room.
Exactly.
And the like mental organization required. And I'm a very organized person. And it was just too much. Like with the news, I didn't even know where the classrooms were. And I was supposed to get all around the school. It was just an absolute nightmare in so many levels. And having that one classroom and being able to have that base, I have that this year for the first time, probably since like 2015. I've got one room where I teach all of my lessons, and it's my classroom, and it's not even particularly beautiful classroom. It is just a room, but it's mine, and I stay there, and I love it. It's such a comforting thing to have. It really is the little things. All right. Well, we have reached 10 p.m. Goodness gracious. Is there anything you wanted to say, or anything you wanted to share with our listeners that you maybe haven't had a chance to say yet?
Well, not particularly, just with those who may be listening. Well, no, I do, but just
Okay,
those
good.
who maybe like me are neurodivergent. Just honestly, it does get better. You know, if it doesn't work out for you, there is somewhere else, and it's just about having that perseverance to find somewhere, and things do get better. I promise.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I know the positive things are all lovely to talk about, but thank you for sharing the less than ideal experiences as well. It's really,
Okay.
really
No
valuable
worries.
for people to hear. So thank you so much, Amy, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And everyone should get a good night's sleep. And if you're sick tomorrow, don't go in, because we need to stay healthy. So thank you very much, and have a lovely evening.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.